You are listening to the Vaultcast, the official podcast of the B-Movie Film Vault, with your hosts, Jordan Guerin and Silent Steve Oldford.
Hey everybody, we're back. This is the Vaultcast. This is Jordan.
And this is Silent Steve.
And we just got out of seeing Shin, Gojira.
Which technically is the second time.
Yes.
This is
the second time we've watched the movie. First time on the big screen. I think it looked better on the big screen than it did on that crappy screener they gave me.
Well, the screener is for review purposes only.
Yeah.
So, quality is not what it's for, I guess.
Yeah, well, they don't want people copying it and giving it out. I can understand that. But it looks good. It looks good. Some of the CGI effects that kind of look dodgy from the screener actually didn't look so bad on the big screen. So,
well, what looks dodgy, not that it matters because only review people would have the screener, but what looked dodgy on the screener was when he would morph.
Yeah.
But now on the big screen, how are we at that point in this? When he morphs, he gives off heat. And that was like a heat wave that you see.
Yeah.
But on the screener, it looked pixely.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe it was just bad CGI, but it's not that it's bad CGI. It's what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
It just looks bad on anything other than theater quality. So, but yeah, before we jump to that point in the story, I guess right at the beginning, no spoiler. Like if you're trying to get a gauge on how we feel about the movie, Jordan and I both like it. And we know who isn't going to like it. People who get bored with talking.
Yes.
If you get bored with talking, if there's scenes where people are talking to each other and emoting, and you think it's dull, you're not going to enjoy this movie.
A vast majority of it is like boardroom and meetings and...
But here it is, and here's my defense of that.
Yeah.
That's the point.
It's supposed to be realistic...
Well, yeah, but this is a thinly veiled allegory for what happened with the Fukushima disaster after the tsunami, okay? And the success that this movie's had in Japan speaks to that because there's still a lot of people who are upset with how that particular event was handled over there, okay? Now, there's a little bit of the director's political beliefs sprinkled in, but if the movie's that successful, he's hit a chord with somebody, or struck a chord, I mean. So, yeah, if you get bored by talking, or if you expect it to be the Godzilla that you liked as a kid...
Yeah, it's nothing like that.
It's nothing like that. If you go in with an open mind and realize that it's a movie about how to handle an unprecedented natural disaster from a strictly Japanese point of view, it's almost like a civics lesson. Because, like, really, there's a lot of stuff I didn't realize they couldn't do without U.S. approval.
We're kind of under our thumb ever since World War II.
I knew that, but I thought it was more from just the military standpoint. I didn't realize how far-reaching American influence is in the decision-making. Like, it's almost like they always have to whisper back, hey, this is what we're doing.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay? That, Uncle Sam?
So, yeah. But it isn't outright bitter. I mean, there are scenes where they are grateful for the U.S. help.
Yeah.
But there's also this notion that, well, if we were allowed to do it on our own, we probably could too.
Yeah. It's a frustration with having to answer to the U.S. for so many things. And a frustration with the red tape of their own politics in that country.
Yeah.
They have to have a meeting to get the okay for another meeting, to give the okay
Which
for a press conference.
they make jokes about that in the movie.
Absolutely.
My only hang-up, and it isn't as bad the second time around, but my only hang-up is they really make their point about the bureaucratic red tape in the first third of the movie, and then you've got to deal with 2/3 of the movie. Like, you know that they're going to run into these problems. And it's funny because in one of the first meetings, when they don't know what's out there in the bay, and the tunnel flooded in the very beginning, there's this thing where all of them are in there and they have this board meeting, and as a joke or as a snide comment to how long the meeting was, they put up on screen, like it goes black and they just put titles on screen, meeting abbreviated. Because, to give the idea that it took forever for that meeting to get through, and at the end of it, they still didn't know anything.
Yeah.
That's a commentary on how they handle things. So This movie's a lot less about how you feel about Godzilla and a lot more how you feel about bureaucratic red tape.
Well, I was talking to somebody who did not like the movie at all yesterday, and what it boiled down to in the end was like, look, the whole era of like, you know, magical, whimsical Godzilla movies is over. Everything's got to be super realistic now. Like how people respond to the sudden arrival of a giant monster. That's what the focus is on a lot of these movies nowadays. Like,
well, what it reminded me a lot more of, and I may be referencing something that not a lot of people have seen, I don't know, the Korean movie, The Host.
Yeah.
That movie was also very much less about the monster showing up, more about how people handled it. And that's what this is. It's not about Godzilla showing up. And for people who want Godzilla to show up and rain destruction, you're only going to get a few scenes.
But they are glorious.
They are glorious,
yes.
But you're only going to get a few scenes. And he's so destructive that it wouldn't make sense to have more than a few scenes.
Yeah.
Because whenever he has the energy to fight, it's devastating. It's like... it's hard to explain.
It's basically like watching a nuke go off in the center of a major city.
Yeah, it's like a nuke going off, but with pinpoint accuracy, rather than
a devastating sprinkler system.
Yes. My only worry with this film is that its massive success. If it would have been modestly successful enough to warrant a sequel, I would have been happy, because then they could take it in a different direction. But it has gotten so successful, and this happens with American movies too, it's gotten so successful that they won't mess with the formula.
Yeah.
This is a beginning and end Godzilla movie. They said everything they needed to say about government and how to handle this particular Godzilla.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go with this. You only had one Fukushima disaster. You can't keep going back to that well. So where they go from here worries me more.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of interesting stuff. Like there's a character they discussed several times in the movie named Goro Maki. This is kind of a reference to the reporter character from Godzilla 1985 and Son of Godzilla. That was the other one.
Okay.
The whole movie starts with his like disappearance. Like they find his boat just floundering out in like, I'm not even sure. It's not Tokyo Bay. And he has all this information just chilling out on the table in there, which they find and put to use later in the film. But I wonder if he kickstarted the whole thing and created Godzilla.
Yeah, he did. Well, not created.
Well, they said he tried to create something to destroy radiation.
Yeah, they don't outright say that he created Godzilla. What they do say is that he hates Japan.
It's got like a Dr. Mifune thing going from Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, or even maybe shades of Serizawa.
I pictured him like diving down into the ocean and then sacrificing himself.
Yeah, he left his shoes.
And then maybe his genetic material is what helps kickstart Godzilla's mutation.
Well, I mean, you're going really far there.
Okay, well...
Well, I mean, he left his shoes on the boat.
Yeah.
This is all speculation.
Yes.
He left his shoes on the boat with all the information of what he knows about the creature. Obviously, the creature would have to exist for him to know that. So it can't be just him diving down and becoming Godzilla. It also can't be that he made it right then, because he wouldn't have been able to have any information on it if it didn't already exist.
That's true. We don't know how long his boat was out there. We don't really know anything about him. He's just like this phantom character.
His wife died from radiation poisoning. He blames Japan, and he hates radioactivity.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what they say about him. You don't find out about that until like almost the very end of the movie. So it's pointless.
And the other thing that I found interesting that a lot of people are speculating on is that the final shot of the movie, there's spoilers galore in this, so Godzilla's...
Well, we already said what criteria...
Yeah.
If you're not going to like it.
So, Godzilla is defeated temporarily, we guess, and the last shot is just like an upward angle shot that goes up the spines on his tail. And when you get to the tip of his tail, it's this like bizarre mishmash of like teeth and like human bodies in these like horrifying positions.
Yeah.
So somebody said, what was the deal with that? I was like, well, maybe he was starting to absorb humans to use their genetic makeup to like evolve again.
I don't know.
That was
they already said
he
had more genetic material than a human being anyway. I think it's more, this is the director of Neon Genesis
Evangelion.
and he will take it, he will give you images that make no sense, or because they're provocative.
Yeah.
He'll show you that at the end like a stinger because it doesn't mean anything, and he'll just listen to the discussion with his big ears.
I think it's interesting though that they show that. I mean, is it supposed to look like a nuclear holocaust?
Well, I mean, he also has a whale in his tail, a whale skeleton.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe whatever he absorbs exits through the tail. I mean,
I didn't think about that. Yeah. Of course, his tail's a loaded gun.
You don't ever
as well.
see him honestly. If that's the case, then it would be cars and boats sticking out of his tail. Because there are so many cars and boats thrown through the air in this movie. It's the most metaphorical incarnation of Godzilla.
Since 54, yeah.
Well, 54, what was happening was the metaphor. Godzilla himself was just a monster.
Yeah.
The metaphor was, this is our fault, blah, blah, blah. As a living being, this is the most metaphorical Godzilla's gotten, because he doesn't function like a living being. He doesn't move like a living being. He doesn't react to anything he just kind of just walks forward.
It's like very rarely, golem. Like the golem. Almost.
Or Frankenstein's monster, I guess.
That.
But he's not like any incarnation of Godzilla before, because even in 54, the original, he had his own personality to an extent.
Yeah.
Which is probably due to the actor in the suit. All that aside, I don't know where they're going with it. I think a lot of the frustration, and I said this to you before we'll watch it again.
Yeah.
A lot of the frustration is that Godzilla's been around for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
There have been a lot of different versions, and everyone has their favorite version, and you are going to see none of those. Right?
Yeah.
And it bothers some people. It doesn't bother me as much because we already have our favorite Godzilla movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just happy he's still around. And if you can still come up with something new to say with Godzilla, then that says more about the character and how what a great creature he is than it does about you being disappointed that there was no monster fight.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. I mean, honestly, this is a nice... the American 2014 and this one are nice bookends of the whole compendium of the Godzilla film series, I think.
Yeah.
Because you got one that's kind of honors the Showa era, which the American one very much did in its own way. And then this one really honors the original incarnation a lot.
Well, yeah, what I like about this is the marketing for the 2014 one made it seem like this is going to be an apocalyptic event, like Godzilla's going to
and then he was a total bro. Then he shows up and, helps us.
Yeah.
Doesn't even...
Stand back, guys, I got this.
Yeah. The only destruction he did was because he was, trying to get away from the military. Yeah.
This one is the, most apocalyptic-looking Godzilla we've ever seen.
Honestly, when the first trailer came out, that has got to be one of the most honest trailers that I've seen in a long time. Because everything you see in that trailer, the one that came out earlier this year, what was it, March maybe? No, actually.
You mean the most recent one for the American release, or the second?
No, the one when Japan was advertising it before their release. It actually came out in June. Remember, we were commenting on how late the trailer was.
Yeah.
That's a very honest trailer. Most of the trailers, you see faces talking to each other, and then there's a few shots of destruction. Yeah. That's pretty much the movie. But it's interesting. If you really pay attention to what the people are saying to each other, if you're they're talking, I'm going to zone out, then you're never going to catch up. Yeah. There's always something going on, something, interaction,
a new discovery, or we got to pass this legislation to declare war on Godzilla, or something.
Well, I mean, not to brag, I typically don't miss a lot when I watch a movie. And the second time, I picked up on a lot more nuance that I hadn't seen the first time. I didn't realize that the main character actually got that job because of the other guy with the glasses. And that guy was always like, will you keep your mouth shut? I got you this job. And I didn't pick up on any of that the first time.
A lot of people complain, I don't know any of the characters' names. There's 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 no one to cheer for. There's no arcs. But I mean, Yaguchi is the main character, and he kind of does have an arc. He's like Japan's savior in a way.
Yaguchi is what Ano wants to tell the young generation they should be. This is very preachy movie. This is very rah-rah Japanese nationalism. It's going to go over a lot of American heads. Like, they're not going to get it. He doesn't want to be prime minister. People tell him he should be, but he doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
He wants people who are going to make judgment calls. He wants intelligent people, not people of rank.
Not people more worried about...
not people more worried about their careers.
Their careers than dealing with an issue.
He actually cares about the country. Like, he has all these attributes that are noble attributes, and he's sort of the avatar for what the director wants or thinks Japanese government should be like.
Yeah.
But it's not like at the end of the movie he's going to decide to be prime minister. He's already in the capacity that the director thinks that he should be in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that character represents. He does have an arc because he gets to prove that he's the right person for the job. So anybody who thinks there are no arcs, just, I don't know.
And one thing I also like, in the older films, like even non-Godzilla stuff, like the Mysterians, which this movie uses music from during the last battle of Godzilla. Ishiro Honda loved using themes of international cooperation. And like earlier in the film, Japan is kind of like under the US's thumb, but as the movie progresses, they say, you know what? We're going to take care of this ourselves. You guys can help us, but we have to deal with this on our own. Don't nuke us.
Well, that's the big push. Like, I mean, America's going to use its doomsday weapon.
Yeah. And Russia and China are also in the same boat.
Well,
Like,
what they're saying with that is, look, we're letting people who don't have a vested interest in the well-being of Japanese people make our decisions for us. So an option like nuking Tokyo is not a big deal and one of the characters says Far East Asia.
Yeah.
That's of course we can do that push button solution way over here. That's what they're saying with that. I think it would be a misinterpretation to say it's anti-American.
It's definitely not anti-American.
He's just saying, I think the director is just saying, look, a lot of these, and he even shows, it's so odd, like, he makes some of the most interesting creative choices, and I'll get back, remind me to get back to that.
Okay.
But what he's basically saying is a lot of this political maneuvering is outdated, because we're not the Japan that tried to take over the world anymore. So,
we're not the scrap and build Japan that came afterwards.
Yes. And so it's unnecessary to go through these channels now because we're just trying to actually deal with a real situation here, and we can't because there's no precedent and we're not allowed to do anything on our own.
Yeah.
That's the message. Okay, so the interesting choices he makes, like he almost reminds me of Sam Fuller. Have you ever seen any Sam Fuller movies?
Honestly, just one.
Sam Fuller, which one?
Shark with Burt Reynolds.
Did you see, have you seen The Big Red One?
No.
Shock, you haven't seen Shock, have you seen Shock Corridor?
No. I guess I have some movie watching.
Okay, what about The Man Who Shot Jesse James?
No.
Okay.
I told you I've seen one Sam Fuller movie.
Sam Fuller, to explain what I'm trying to say here, he was a natural filmmaker. He didn't care about what you're not supposed to do. He would do jump cuts. He would show color out of nowhere in a black and white movie. He would. He would film with his gut. Okay, That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
and it sort of feels like that with Ano in this movie because there are so many characters that look directly into the camera and talk. Mm-hmm. There are so many moments where you're seeing point of view of a chair or the point of view of some pens
computer
or
screen.
laptop. Computer screen.
Yeah.
There are actual shots of legal documents. They mention Hiroshima and they show black and white stills from the bombings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, and it doesn't take you out of it that much, but it's definitely not what you're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like this guy was just filming with his gut. He's just like, I'm going to put this here and leave it there. Mm-hmm. And anybody who says they don't want it there, I don't care. Plus, his decision to label everything was a little odd. Like, it isn't even just because the movie's subtitled for us. Everything is labeled for the Japanese, too. You know what district you're in all the time, like down to almost street names.
You know,
like if they show a jet, they tell you what kind of jet it is and what squadron it's from.
Everybody's political office or rank in the military is up there, too.
Yeah, and if someone's rank changes, they flash that on screen. There's one point where they show an article that, like, characters are talking about a legal article that they have to go by.
Yeah.
And the whole time that they're talking, over their face is the article, so you can read it. I mean, if you're Japanese.
Yeah,
So, like, it's really off-the-wall decisions that don't hurt the movie, but they're not what you would expect in a movie, let alone a Godzilla movie.
It kind of reminded me of Intruder in a way, with all the point-of-view shots.
Yeah, except Intruder just felt like it didn't know what it was doing.
Yeah, the first half anyway, but...
Yeah. And that was a movie we forgot to mention on our other podcast.
Our Halloween podcast.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So I would say, what didn't you like? Let's just say what, because I mean, this isn't a totally likable movie.
The first time that we've sat through it, there were some distractions and whatnot, but I kind of got lost a little bit due to all the different boardroom meetings and discussions. But this time, when I had like a moment to sit in a quiet theater and take it all in, I didn't mind it so much. I think it runs a little long in places. It could have been trimmed here and there. But one thing I'm not going to complain about is the Godzilla scenes. Like, I thought I would hate that the most when I first saw the design.
I'm still not crazy about the design going forward.
Yeah.
The design is perfect for this particular story. Because, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm Mr. Rambo. The design for this works for this movie because not only does the disaster happen in stages, he happens in stages.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So that's where it gets into the Fukushima thing. Because at first it was just the earthquake, which is the initial stage of Godzilla. He just shows up, there's a rumble, nobody knows what it is.
You see a geyser and the...
Then he starts tearing as in, like, pupils, what would you call that stage? Larva? I don't know.
It's weird. It's like watching a fish turn into an amphibian. Like, it's got more in common with Godzilla versus Hedorah than anything.
Yeah, and I've heard complaints, why not just make a Hedorah movie? Because no one would watch it. Anyway, so...
That's not true. Yoshimitsu Banno would go nuts over it.
Yeah. But he happens in stages, right. Just like the disaster happened in stages. First it was the earthquake, then it was the tsunami, then you had the radiation event. Mm-hmm. Okay? Same thing here. First he just shows up and he's just a tail flying out in the ocean, which seems to be kind of a nod from that one scene from 2014.
Right.
And then he starts tearing through as a larva or whatever, second stage.
He comes out of the water and he doesn't have forearms yet.
It looks like one of those Chinese dragons, and I know I'm talking I'm using Chinese and a Japanese thing, but like there's those Chinese dragons.
He's got like the big fish eyes, and he's got gills that he rub blood everywhere at first.
Well, and he moves like there's 10 guys and him moving him around.
Yeah, kind of like a snake almost.
Yeah, but the way he destroys things is very reminiscent of when the tsunami was going through.
Right.
Everything piles up and pushes forward.
Right.
And his final stage, which is the Fukushima stage, which there's that nod to Fukushima when they all get the rah-rah speech. And they go in, there's only like a few guys that are going to go in and actually take care of this thing. And it's going to be in an unconventional way. That final stage, the most destructive stage, is a nod to the nuclear event. So it works for this because they're doing a metaphor for that. So if he... Excuse me. If Godzilla just showed up in that final stage, or even if he just showed up and looked like the Godzilla of old, you wouldn't get that metaphor as much because the way he would destroy stuff would be different. Mm-hmm. So it works for this movie. I didn't think I would like it, and I was okay with it. But I would like to see him maybe come out in another stage where he looks like something more practical, something like a living creature would look, instead of this thing that will all of a sudden freeze in midair and just not move for days.
I did like all the military scenes.
Yeah, there were a few shots in this movie, especially with the military stuff, that I think if we had seen it in 3D, it would have been pretty cool. And even that one shot where they're looking into the computer screen, the most obvious 3D shot in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Where they're looking into the computer screen and the schematic is in front of them. You're inside the schematic. So that was definitely supposed to be 3D. So that would have, I mean, it all would have been nice to see in 3D, but we don't have that luxury. I'm still glad it got released, but...
Yeah, I think part of why I enjoyed it is it's a legit Japanese Godzilla movie that actually came to the States in theater. That hasn't happened since Godzilla 2000. And that was back in 99.
And that suit didn't look as good as this one did.
Yeah. Well, is it a suit? They used motion capture.
They used a lot of stuff. They used whatever trickery they could. There were a few shots that were definitely, because they built like a 15-foot tall animatronic one too. And when I first heard that, the first thing I thought was, why? And then there are a few shots where you're like, oh, that's what they did. Because the way they move the camera around him, it gives this really great sense of scale that you wouldn't get with a 6-foot tall suit. So that, I mean, this is the guy who did the special effects for the Gamera series. And he will build a suit for one shot. He did it before. He'll build like a forced perspective suit. He did it for Gamera. Where the foot, like if you look at it normally, it looks weird, but because where they placed the camera, the foot was huge. The rest of the body got smaller as it went up. It looks strange, but for that shot, it's awesome. He does that kind of stuff here. I mean, honestly, there's a nice mix of real and CGI in it. Some of the buildings collapsing looked really great.
Are you talking about his initial beam attack, or are you talking about when they execute their...
Even when he's crawling through and he crawls up on that one building.
Yeah. Oh, I love that shot. Totally kills a family in there, too. The toddler goes out the window.
That's, there's some really shocking, violent stuff in this movie. The one thing I didn't notice, to go back to things we didn't notice, in the rubble, the guy's leg.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't notice that the first time. There's like dead people everywhere in this movie.
Yep.
I think you're right about running long. What I didn't like the most was that whole character, the woman who is the U.S.-Japanese liaison.
Do you think it was pandering to U.S. audiences?
No, it wasn't pandering to U.S. audiences.
Like we do sometimes?
What broke it for me, it wasn't that they had a character in that capacity. That doesn't bother me. It's that they wrote her in a way that made me feel like, well, if you're going to commentate on U.S. involvement, you need to get a realistic U.S. character, right? You can't have dialogue about a Japanese woman, even if she's Japanese American, having a realistic plan to be president. Yeah, by the time she's 40 years old.
That took me out of the movie too.
They should have just had her be a liaison, and they didn't need her to be American-born. They could have had her just be Japanese-born, but she works over there.
Yeah,
and that would explain her terrible English accent and stuff like that. They wrote her very badly.
Actually,
and I don't even think it's the actress's fault. No. She won the Japanese Oscar. She's obviously, not for this, but for another movie. She obviously has some talent to use. She just had a terrible character.
What's funny is Gucci's the friend that got him the job that we see earlier in the movie. I call him Japanese Stephen Colbert. He actually speaks better English than she does.
Yeah, there's this moment where he's just pulls out his English to use it on her, and it's better than her.
Yeah, I was like, whoa!
It's contradictory to what they're trying to do.
Yeah. But it's the small things to really nitpick.
As far as the European and American actors they bring in, they're not as bad as they usually are in a Japanese Godzilla movie.
I did find it interesting that the American actors all look like they're totally evil. Like one dude definitely looked like Richard Nixon.
Well, and they talk like they're evil too.
Yes, we will help Japan. No, really, we will.
Yeah, I mean it's not the Godzilla versus King Ghidorah remake.
No.
They're not that hammy.
No.
Where the one bad guy looks like Larry from the Three Stooges. He does. They're not as bad as they could be. and they're sparingly used, thankfully. So it's just her character that I got hung up on, just because the way they wrote her. They should have not. I mean, you don't need this garbage about that she was, third generation American and stuff like that. I mean, none of that's there, and you're asking too much of an actress to make badly written dialogue that isn't in her language work.
I find it interesting that she's supposed to be an American citizen with Japanese descent, but she ultimately chooses Japan towards the end. She actually gets off a helicopter with the ambassador she's with.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was kind of strange.
But then they still talk like she has the same dream of... I don't know. I don't know what any of... That's what I'm saying. There's nothing to figure out about her character. It's just badly written.
I guess that was her moment to say, I'm choosing my homeland over America, I guess? I don't know, it's odd. Like you said, it's a very nationalistic film, so maybe that's playing into it.
Do you have a favorite character, since it's a character-driven movie? Mine's that girl on the laptop.
She's hilarious, yes. She steals the show.
Well, she doesn't look at anyone. She looks at her computer the whole movie. And I know people like that. Like, there are just people who are always looking at their phones, but they can hear you and talk to you.
Well, that's the other great thing. It's like all the outcasts in Japanese politics get together and save the day.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Actually, my favorite... I was wrong. My favorite character is the pink towel guy.
Yes.
Yeah, he's awesome. He just shows up and he's like, I'm awesome. I'm the awesome old nerd.
I love that about the movie, though. It's like all the societal political rejects band together, given
carte blanche.
And they pull
what you don't have in other Godzilla movies that you have in this are actual unique, nuanced characterizations of the people in the movie. Like the replacement prime minister, who, like, after they had this meeting about having to use nukes, they leave and he looks at his bowl of noodles and he goes, "Oh, my noodles got soggy.
I knew this job was going to be hard."
Yeah, I knew this job was going to be hard. And it's like, it's this funny moment where they didn't have to film that or write that, but it works.
It's a very human moment.
Yeah, there are these moments of humanity that work. Prime Minister is hilarious.
Yeah, he is.
Just his facial expressions, and everything goes wrong for him. And you're just watching his whole world fall apart. Like, you can tell he was this guy that just wanted to get the job and hope that nothing happened while he was in term.
Yeah.
And then the worst thing ever happens, and he doesn't know how to handle it. But, like, I mean, there's these comic moments where, he says, don't worry, it won't be able to support its own weight on land, and then they run it. It's on land?
Yeah. Well, before that, he's told, only use verified information, and he decides to go off script and say, don't worry, it can't come out on land. It's purely an aquatic creature. And then somebody comes out and drops a bomb, and he's like, what? On live TV, no less.
Yeah.
And there's a couple, like...
what I did like, not to cut you off, and I'll get back to it.
That's okay.
Because it deals directly with what you just said. And this is what I like. There's a movie trope that really annoys me, and Hooper's the only one that pulled it off, where you have this scientist who knows what's really going on, and no one listens to him. They don't do that in this movie. The scientist who knows what's going on within a few minutes is proven right, and they're just like, well, we still don't know what to do, though.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a much better way to handle it than, I told you this volcano was going to erupt, Why didn't anyone listen to me?
The scientific doomsayer that's in 90% of movies.
You're doomed if you stay here.
Yeah, I mean, you have those, but they're proven right immediately.
Yeah.
And then they're not there just to say, hey, things are going to go wrong. They're there to also help solve the problem. So go ahead, what you were going to say.
No, I was going to say, there's a few very dramatic moments in the film. Some asshole in the theater started laughing when one guy starts to lose his shit when the temporary prime minister announces that America's going to drop a nuke on Tokyo. He's
well, and what's good about that moment is that's a guy who didn't move his face until that time.
Yeah, he was stone-faced.
Yeah, they had several shots of him in the movie where he just doesn't move or say anything. And then once you hear that there's a nuke coming, this guy just breaks down in tears, and he's like, we can't do this.
His lip quivers, and he just starts losing his cool, and I was like, wow. It's actually one of the more, powerful
It was the part of the movie not to laugh at.
Yeah. That's what
there's a lot to laugh at in this movie. There's intention. There's a lot more levity than I thought there would be.
Yeah. The one poor bastard that's running down the street, and Godzilla's
that is hilarious in the worst way.
Or they call off the first initial attack because an old man's piggybacking a little girl, and he's in the firing zone.
He's piggybacking his old wife.
Was that his wife?
That's his old wife.
I thought it was
old lady.
Oh, she was tiny. I guess I have to watch it a third time.
That's funny, but it's also there to say, look, you saved 2 old people, and how many more hundreds died?
Yeah, and then
you didn't try to stop it right then.
And I think it's interesting that this Godzilla has no personality. Everything it does is based off of instinct. Like when the first attack completely fails, he just marches on through into Tokyo, and then America shows up. Like, I'm surprised they weren't waving American flags out the windows of the bombers overhead.
Yeah. that was the worst voice acting.
Yeah. Payback time.
Payback time.
Yep, payback over.
Here we go. We're coming around again.
Payback time.
Why couldn't they get because in Godzilla '85, the Roger Corman one, they had this great sayonara sucker moment.
Oh yeah.
I love that part.
Sayonara sucker.
They could have done something like that, but they decided to hire people that...
Yeah, it's a really cool scene, though, because the U.S. bombs actually damage Godzilla when Japan's self-defense force is going to do shit.
But it prompts his most devastating attack.
Which is, like, the coolest scene in the movie. There's a couple good money shots of, like, a fiery inferno in the background, Godzilla just kind of strolling through it. But when he goes, like, full nuclear and has lasers coming out of every orifice and out of his spines, it's really cool. I didn't think I'd like it, honestly.
You're talking about guys that aren't afraid to change Godzilla's attributes. Mm-hmm. This is also the same, the guy from the Gamera series. They did a lot of things in that Gamera series where he was in charge of the special effects. The Gamera never did before. They gave him really interesting attributes. And once you see him, you're like, oh, that's cool. It's not like you're like, oh, he can only do that out of his mouth.
Yeah, it's a nice surprise.
I wasn't hung up on that at all. Yeah. I thought it was within. It was also within what you thought you could.
And it's not unlike anything Godzilla's ever done. He's had like a nuclear shockwave attack he's used in previous films.
Yeah.
But he's never used like a purple death ray before.
Well, the cool thing about that, and that was actually what I was most disappointed in the 2014 Godzilla, was his breath. I know they tried to make it look realistic,
like a plasma. It was like a plasma cutter.
The 2014?
Yeah.
I thought they made it real flamey. It was still blue, but it wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
Just give him a beam. Who cares?
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants to see. No one's going to get upset with you for showing them what they want to see. It wouldn't be like people watch that and go, he's never done that before.
I think most people are like, yes, finally, he's going to do the thing.
And then it was kind of underwhelming. But in this, it escalates. Like at first, it's like a heat vent. He's releasing energy, right? And it looks like he's releasing energy. It doesn't look like he's using it as a weapon. It looks like it's
like an exhaust port on something.
It looks like it's part of his biology to do that.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool that they did it that way. So first he lets go of this heat vent that just pours black smoke through the city, killing everything in its wake.
Probably.
And then
the orange fire comes.
Then the orange fire comes and sets fire to that fire. And as it intensifies, the beam gets really cool looking. The beam gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's like a laser. And then he just decides to use this laser on anything that moves. And it's just amazing to behold.
Yep.
I'm not real high on his jaw splitting apart, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know what that reminded me of was Blade 2.
The vampires.
The vampires.
Yeah.
It wasn't so bad because he's already just looking at him so different from any Godzilla.
Absolutely.
So they could kind of do whatever they wanted at that point.
I was content with it.
Yeah. It's so different. I can't even really rank it because there's so many areas that it's better than other Godzilla movies,
mm-hmm.
and then so many other areas that it doesn't really hold. I don't know. It's just unique. I wouldn't say it doesn't belong, but it's just so unique that you can't really rank it anywhere. I don't know where I would put it in the whole. It's kind of middle of the pack just because I don't know where to put it.
Yeah.
There's a lot I enjoyed about it though. There's like the human element was very well done.
Mm-hmm. there's more human interaction with Godzilla in this than most other movies.
Well, yeah, and actually, it works to our advantage that we are so small.
Yeah.
In this movie, because pretty much anything that tried to attack him, he would attack back. So there's like this Achilles heel way of getting at him that we use.
Yeah.
And,
which I think that was actually a really fun plan that they put into effect and stop him in the end.
Well, that was a definite direct callback to when they were using the seawater to cool off the reactor.
Yeah.
At Fukushima.
But I mean, like, they're using their trains filled with bombs to, like, hit him in the shins, basically. Hit Shin Gojira in the shins. And then they blow up buildings to just knock him down. Like, they take out 5 skyscrapers between the U.S. and Japan.
Yeah.
And then the drones, U.S. drones, like, just 6 sorties of them flying in and just launching missiles and everything they can.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, all the different ways to attack him, it's fun.
Yeah. Also, the use of old music and sound effects throughout the movie.
That's what I was going to say.
There you go.
That actually was off-putting for me.
Say what?
That was off-putting for you?
It was nice hearing it, but the movie is like based in so much realism that I didn't think it was necessary. It's hard to explain. I kind of, for this movie, like most of the newer music. I wasn't crazy about the 80s guitar.
Oh, yeah. During the montage where they're working hard.
There's well, it's a montage where they're like getting the coolant ready.
Yep, the coagulant.
And,
Yep.
Then
just like...
it's like, I guess they hired Whitesnake to come in and... No, because it doesn't sound like... It sounds like an 80s kind of... I don't know.
80s action guitar riff.
Yeah.
Well, he did that in Godzilla vs. Biollante, too. They had, like, that...
But that's an older movie. I mean, you're only a few years out of the 80s.
Yeah, I know. Well, that was 89.
Oh, was it 89?
Yeah. Yeah, not to ruin your train of thought there.
I just don't think it was...
Didn't match the movies, what you're saying.
It didn't match, because you're calling back to different movies. Dun dun da 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 dun 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 da da da.
I appreciated it. I liked it. I especially like the theme music towards the end before they deliver the knockout punch. Literally, they fill his mouth with punch, and he drinks it, and he freezes.
It's you can say a lot about the movie, but you can't say anything that will change anybody's initial mind. If you just look at it and you go, I don't know about the design, you're not going to like it. If you don't like movies where people talk a lot, you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can say or explain that will change your mind about it, because it's an aesthetic thing. There are just some people that just will not get over certain things. But like for people to say there's too much bureaucracy in the movie, that's the point of the movie. I told you, it'd be like me watching Fast and Furious and they go, you know, that'd be a lot better if there weren't any cars in it. Well, no, because that's why people watch those movies.
Yeah.
People who like cars like that are gonna get more out of it. Mm-hmm. You know, if you are okay with watching the political interactions of people, and think that's interesting, then
it's definitely eye-opening.
It was eye-opening, and it kept the movie going.
Yeah.
I mean, they were always what this movie does better than the 2014 Godzilla. And I keep comparing it to that because it was recent.
Yeah, you can't help but do that.
What it does better is that Godzilla's presence is always felt.
Yeah.
Even if you don't see him, they're talking about him. They're getting over what he just did. They're trying to plan or prevent what he's going to do next. It's always about him. Like, he just wasn't there for a large part of the 2014 movie.
Yeah,
he just shows up, and once he's there, he's there.
Yay!
Yeah. So, like, he seems ever present in this. And there's a lot of Showa era movies where he just shows up, you know.
In the nick of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does, I don't know, it does handle that aspect of it better. So they can't make everybody happy. And honestly, what they were trying to do with this movie is just make Japanese people happy. This is the most Japanese Godzilla movie to come out
in a long
time.
Yeah.
I doubt very highly they were anticipating a U.S. release at all, or even cared to. And Japan gets like that about some stuff. I mean, that's why they won't stop whaling.
Oh, Japan.
So, watch it or don't watch it?
I would say give it a chance. I give it my recommendation. Not a huge recommendation, but I enjoyed it enough that I would actually watch it again. If you're a Godzilla fan, go see it, because how often are you going to see a Japanese Godzilla movie on the big screen? And just, give it a shot. Like I said at the start of this show, there's people that I thought would love it that didn't, and there's people I thought that would hate it that walked out and said, wow, that was really good.
Here's what you
got to make up your own mind.
It's like an atheist going to church. Just go in with an open mind and you might be converted.
That's very eloquently put. I like that.
All right.
So
I have to go to work.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to pray to our Lord and Savior Godzilla.
Take care, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.